It's been said that success leaves clues, but what does that really mean for competitive athletes, especially cowboys, cowgirls, and future world champions in any sport? This episode is taken directly from my upcoming book, Beyond the Arena, the ultimate performance guide for rodeo athletes, but is applicable to every athlete from pre-high school to professional and their support network, including family, friends, coaches, sponsors, etc. The first clue is having a SMART goal, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. For example, saying your goal is to be the best may be admirable, but is not very smart. On the other hand, saying, I will focus on my weaknesses of not being able to flank every calf I catch by following a specific strength training program and gaining at least 10 pounds of muscle in order to place in the top 10 of tie-down calf roping at the 1978 American Junior Quarter Horse Association World Championships is smarter. Yes, that was actually one of my goals when I was a 16-year-old weighing a little over 100 pounds after the 1977 AJQHA World Championships, when I caught my calf right outside the box but ran out of time trying to chase the calf down and get it tied. In 1978, although I did go sub 2 seconds in the breakaway roping qualification round and finished 6th in the finals, I had a bad calf in the tie-down calf roping and ended up not making the highly competitive top 10. However, I did get it flanked and tied. Once you have a SMART goal, the next success clue is to reverse engineer the process of attaining it. This is similar to the second habit of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Begin with the end in mind. So once you know your goal, the next step is to honestly and accurately determine where you're at. Then you literally develop a plan to get from A to B. Sounds easy, but it's not. I doubt any successful athlete has ever said, yeah, I think it'll be pretty cool to be the best, and without ever clarifying that dream, much less developing and executing a plan to attain it, ever achieved anything significant. Although your support network, family, friends, coaches, officials, current and former champions in your sport or event, and others may help you identify your baseline, they become invaluable in helping you reverse engineer the process to get you from A to B. When I was 16, I pretty much relied on just myself to establish my goal, define my baseline, and reverse engineer the process. It was kind of a no-brainer. Despite spending hours a day roping a bale of hay and tying my wooden calf tying dummy, I just plain needed to get bigger, faster, and stronger. My hugely supportive parents more or less said to eat more and work harder. At the time, we owned a car dealership, trained and cared for a dozen horses, and my FFA project was planting and tending 40 acres of young apple trees. Despite all my previous research, my mom worked at a community college library, and I would go there after school and read textbooks and journal articles on lifting weights, nutrition, increasing speed, positive thinking, motivation, etc. And keep in mind, this was 45 years ago, way before the internet. However, my parents were right. I had to eat more and work harder. So instead of dreading cleaning horse stalls, hauling hay and grain, moving piles of dirt, and so on, I actually looked forward to not only doing it, but making it harder. I don't think the saying, work smarter, not harder, had been said yet. For example, if I had to load the wheelbarrow full of dirt, I would load it so full the tire was almost flat, which also made it harder to push. Instead of carrying 1 sack of grain, I would carry 2. Another one of the success clues is James Clear's idea of atomic habits, and Sir David Brailsford's accumulation of marginal gains, which he talks about in the book. I'll put links to them in the description. But in short, once you know your A and B points, you want to look at all the things that you can do which will make the biggest impact on your journey and develop micro plans to improve each factor a little every day. In my goal from 1977, more than 40 years before Atomic Habits was published, one of the main factors I identified was to improve my strength. When I started reading 55 years ago, I was enamored by Greek and Roman mythology. I still have one of my first books published almost 65 years ago. Two of the first heroes I identified were Hercules and Milo of Croton. You probably heard of Hercules, but not Milo. Milo was a multiple-time Olympic champion more than 2,500 years ago and was known for his strength. One of the stories of how he attained his strength was that he would get a newborn calf, usually right after the Olympics, and every day for the next 4 years, yes, the Olympics were 4 years apart even back then, he would lift the calf onto his shoulders and walk around with it. And then, right before the games, he would slaughter the bull and eat it. From a nutritional standpoint, I think that is so amazing he believed the meat, aka protein, would give him added strength for his competition. Anyhow, as an Olympic wrestling champion, he knew he needed to be strong as a bull, pun intended. As a young athlete, if he just walked out into the bull pasture and tried to lift a mature bull, he probably would get his head kicked in. However, by gradually lifting the bull every day, he practiced the ideas of atomic habits and the accumulation of marginal gains. Another one of my childhood idols was Bruce Lee. More than 50 years ago, he was way ahead of the game in human performance. He was famous for borrowing the best of many different types of martial arts and merging them into his own Jeet Kune Do. For example, he studied the art of fencing and realized the footwork of fencing champions was the fastest and most efficient way to advance and retreat during a fight. However, with respect to atomic habits and marginal gains, he realized jumping, otherwise known as plyometrics in today's sporting world, was hugely beneficial to building explosive power. So what did he do? He dug a hole outside his house, and every time he would work on his jumping, he would remove a handful of dirt from the bottom of the hole. After years of doing this marginal increase, he had amazing explosiveness. If you don't believe me, watch some of his old movies. I know most of you rodeo athletes are very skeptical of any modern strength training methods, but what about principles from 50 to 2,500 years ago? Seriously, what if you calf ropers or bull riders got a few calves or bulls when they were almost newborns during your freshman year in high school, and almost every day you either flanked and tied the calves or rode the bulls until you were a senior? I'm not going to get into all the different ways whereby you can make marginal gains. That will be introduced in my book and also covered in my online course. However, I can honestly say there are hundreds of possibilities, and if you marginally improved the majority of them, you could easily 10x or more your performance and results, from inside the rodeo arena, the sports field or stadium, the classroom, or your bank account. A great place to start is by utilizing my free 10 questions to ask myself everyday checklist when you check out my Socratic Warrior website. I also made a short video on it, which I'll link in the description. In both of my books, I lead off with my favorite quote from Socrates: "I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think." For more than 50 years, I have refined this list of 10 questions which will have the most profound impact on your success. I am positive if you ask yourself those 10 questions every day, you will not only identify where you need to focus your attention and effort, but also which areas will have the greatest impact on your success through marginal gains. I'm going to leave you with one more example of how having a really big goal and a detailed long-term plan can lead to amazing results. In the summer of 1992, I made the boldest move in my competitive athletic journey. Only weeks before my daughter was born, I sold everything I could in order to go to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs to learn more about Olympic lifting and become a nationally certified coach. At the time, I was a broke third-class petty officer in the Navy stationed in Pensacola, Florida. Over the past 20 years, I had already competed at the elite level in more than a half a dozen sports, but realized Olympic lifting was the key to my future athletic pursuits. Plus, I wanted to expand my coaching credentials from my newly established business, Gold Medal Sports. 10 years earlier, I competed in my first powerlifting meet and deadlifted 455 pounds in the 150-pound and under class. It was a non-sanctioned event. As I mentioned earlier, the main reason I got into powerlifting was so I could get bigger, faster, and stronger for calf roping. In about 5 years' time of dedicated and consistent lifting and eating healthy, I had packed on about 40 pounds of weight, and due to lifting all those heavy wheelbarrows, bales of hay, and sacks of grain, could pick up more than 3 times my body weight. However, for the past 3 years, I had followed another passion of mine, bicycle road racing, which I had been doing in Sicily. I actually joined the Navy for 2 reasons. Because I thought I needed a vacation after having worked on a horse ranch most of my life, with hardly any days off, and because I wanted to go to Europe and race bicycles like Greg LeMond and Andy Hampsten. Although Pensacola had a lot of benefits, it was really not conducive to my kind of bike racing. I was very strong in the mountains, and with a new baby daughter to care for, a 45-minute weightlifting workout in my garage was better than a 4 to 6 hour bike ride. So, the third week in July 1992, I headed off to Sea Springs, as it's called. I had spent some time there a few years earlier, as my parents managed a large equestrian center outside of town, and I worked one summer for my parents and a local construction company. It was mind-boggling to train alongside the national team and their coaches. Our main instructors were the who's who of American weightlifting. We ate at the training table and witnessed the amazing elite athlete protocol. Unfortunately, it was the week before the Barcelona Games, and many of the athletes were gone. However, many other athletes were still there. On the initial day of the course, we went through many different assessments. First, to know how to conduct them, but also to see where we stood. I was one of the oldest students at 31 years old. Most of the others were collegiate and professional strength coaches who were former Division I athletes. However, the coaches commented on my flexibility, strength, and how quickly I picked up the techniques. When they asked if I had ever Olympic lifted before, I told them I hadn't, but half-jokingly said I'd love to lift in Atlanta in '96. At the end of the course, the president of the U.S. Weightlifting Federation and the national coaching director commended me. They not only invited me to attend the senior club coaches course a few weeks later in Savannah, Georgia, but did something beyond my wildest dreams. They gave me a 4-inch binder with a complete 4-year training plan for the '96 Olympic Games. Not just any plan, but a plan based on my current lifts and detailing every workout, reps, sets, and weights from then until the '96 Games. Up until that time, a 30-plus-year-old weightlifter medaling at the Olympic Games was practically unheard of, let alone a broke, junior, active-duty military member with a family. However, I had a plan, and not just any plan. I had a personalized plan to make it to the Olympic trials and maybe qualify for the '96 Games to be held in Atlanta. So step 1, I had a dream, or better yet, I had a SMART goal. I had a plan. That plan was a reverse-engineered training program taking me from point A to point B. In conclusion, success leaves clues. The first step to be successful in any endeavor is to set a SMART goal, your point B. The second step is to determine your point A. Then you can re-engineer your way from A to B with a detailed and personalized plan. In order to develop your plan, you need to ask yourself some very tough questions, which I've already done for you. These questions will help you identify the areas you can make marginal gains in and ultimately add up to your success and goal achievement. Once you do this for your first goal, then you can reapply the entire process for all areas of your life, inside and beyond the arena. By the way, after following that weightlifting program, I was looking forward to competing in the '96 Olympic trials. At the time, I was deployed to the island of Guam. I was the command fitness leader in charge of our battalion's daily physical fitness training for about 750 Seabees, and leading remedial PT for almost 70 guys who had failed the previous physical fitness test before I took over. Guam is known for incredibly high humidity and daily downpours. I typically got up at 4:30 to put the remedial guys through their warm-up. Then I led the normal PT for an hour before showering, changing, and having breakfast. Then I would work 12 to 14 hours and go to the gym to do my workout. I actually brought my own Olympic bar and bumper plates with me. After the workout, I would study for my advancement or read magazines and books on strength training, nutrition, sports psychology, etc. The U.S. had a great national team member in my 70-kilogram weight class, but I just wanted to see how I could do. I mean, you just never know, right? The big difference was that I was much older, but I also trained under very arduous conditions, didn't have a coach, and did not live at the Olympic Training Center. I can't get into the official reasons, but I was not allowed to leave Guam and attend the trials. So I asked the Guam Weightlifting Federation if I could do my own mini trials under exact Olympic Committee protocol on the day I would have competed in the trials. As I had already volunteered at several of their events, including their Micronesian Games, they agreed. They would have 3 International Weightlifting Federation officials there to weigh me, take my attempts, follow the exact timing, and judge my lifts. So, on that day, after a normal workday for me, as I already described, I went to their training center and weighed in. I weighed in a little under the 70-kilogram limit and was just shy of my 35th birthday. I then proceeded to warm up. Since I would be following myself each time, they allowed me to take the full 2 minutes between each lift. After I was warmed up, I succeeded to successfully lift all 3 of my snatches, finishing with 125 kilograms. I then warmed up for my clean and jerks. After warming up, I got 3 white lights on my first and second attempts, but I missed my third attempt at 155 kilograms. But I did make 150 on my second attempt. I guess I was just too exhausted. Therefore, I finished with a 275 kilogram total in the 70 kilogram weight class. At the Olympic Games in Atlanta several months later, a Chinese lifter won gold with a 357.5 kilogram total. Our U.S. lifter finished 14th with 322.5 kilograms. Despite all my adverse circumstances, my 275 kilograms would have placed me 23rd. I've often wondered what I would have done if I was training and living under the conditions our national team experienced. However, I was still incredibly pleased with my results and attribute a huge portion of my success to the clues of having a smart goal, reverse engineering my plan, making marginal gains, and just plain working my ass off and wanting it bad enough. And yes, as soon as that mock meet was over, I set out on my next 4-year goals and plans. In 2000, I won my first world championship in drug-tested powerlifting and ran 20 miles in 2 hours. I did not give you these 2 examples of my life just to boast, but to show you what can be done when you follow the clues that lead to success. You can do it too. Please like, share, and subscribe for more content on elite performance and personal development.